Yes, you're reading that title right. I'm going on the record right now and saying that killer whales and humans will become equals. The intelligence of whales and dolphins is widely known, but a lot of you have probably never heard anyone make such a bold claim as humans meeting orcas as diplomatic allies. But I'm not making this claim lightly, nor am I saying it'll happen in the near future, but I am saying it'll happen someday, and I'll explain how and why. Let's take this step by step, with the first question to answer being whether killer whales are intelligent enough for this to be possible. Scientific study has proven that a lot of comparable social behaviors that apes, especially humans, exemplify are present in many cetacean species, but the comparison isn't one-to-one. Humans operate as an interconnected society where isolation is almost non-existent. The scale of our social behaviors has evolved to a point where the butterfly effect of one person's actions can directly affect someone on the other side of the world. For a better comparison, we need to look at where humanity was several thousand years ago. Ancient humans were a wandering tribal species, with small groups working together to hunt and care for each other, staking claim to smaller swaths of land that were rich in resources. This is more or less how killer whales operate in today's world, with a few differences to account for their aquatic environment. So, it's only fair to believe that orcas could achieve the same global dominance of the oceans that humans have of the land, given enough time. But that raises a new question. Humans only manage to stretch to the four corners of the globe, conquering every obstacle in our way because of our ability to problem solve, something only possible because evolution and natural selection bestowed big, powerful brains onto us. You may ask, how could killer whales ever compare to humans in that regard? To which I'd say, don't conflate technology with intelligence. Technology is derived from knowledge, and yeah, orcas likely don't have the same swaths of knowledge as us, but they didn't need technology to become apex predators of the world's oceans. That also doesn't mean they can't use critical thinking to understand changes in their environment and take calculated actions in response. Something that's become a problem for us in recent times. Those orcas that have been attacking boats around the Iberian Peninsula wouldn't be so successful if they didn't know how to disable boats by tearing off their rudders. But this is true even in their natural state of being, like beaching themselves to grab seals in the surf, then scooting themselves back into deeper water, or forming a charging brigade to tear apart an ice floe to get a stranded seal, or partnering with humpback whales to herd schools of fish. All of this is to say that orcas possess the academic intelligence to conquer the oceans, and since they possess the ability to trade knowledge, this would ensure the adaptability of their diets in fluctuating environmental conditions, and with it, a lot of boons for any potential partnership with humans. But we humans pride ourselves just as much for our superior emotional intelligence. Is this true for orcas? Yes. And unfortunately, we had to learn this the hard way. If you've watched the Blackfish documentary, you know exactly where I'm going with this. I highly recommend watching the documentary to get the full story, but to put it simply, the whales were stressed and miserable whenever they weren't performing. And it was in this prison that the trainers got to be first-hand witnesses to the true depth of these creatures' emotional intelligence. Probably the single most heart-wrenching events that Blackfish revealed was the forced separation of orca mothers from their calves. Calves that were oftentimes purposefully bred by Seaworld to replace killer whales that died young.
On November 4th, 1988, a killer whale at Seaworld gave the performance of a lifetime. Don't miss this small miracle. Come see our new baby Shamu.
But when Seaworld would transport the calves to another park, for one reason or another, The mothers would react as any human mother would to having their child be ripped away from them.
So the night of the move, we had to deploy the nets to separate them and get Kalina, the baby, into the med pool. And Katina was generally a quiet whale. She was not overly vocal whale. After Kalina was removed from the scene and put on the truck and taken to the airport, and Katina, her mom, was left in the pool, she stayed in the corner of the pool, like literally just shaking and screaming, screeching, crying. Like I'd never seen her do anything like that. And the other females in the pool, maybe once or twice during the night, they'd come out and check on her, and she'd screech and cry, and they would just run back. There was nothing that you could call that, watching it, besides grief.
Kasaka and Takara were very close. Kasaka was the mother, Takara's the calf. Takara was special to me. They were inseparable. When they separated Kasaka and Takara, it was to take Takara to Florida. Once Takara had already been stretchered out of the pool, put on the truck, driven to the airport, Kasaka continued to make vocals that had never been heard before. They brought in the senior research scientist to analyze the vocals. They were long-range vocals. She was trying something that no one had even heard before, looking for Takara. That's heartbreaking.
If that was hard to watch, my apologies. But just as telling was the contrast between two different whales and their methods of expressing frustration with their trainers. The Blackfish documentary was made in response to and centers around the death of Don Brancho, a senior trainer at Seaworld Orlando in 2010, who was brutally attacked by Tilikum, the largest killer whale held in captivity at the time. The exact reason for this attack is unknown, but the show that Tilikum and Don were doing at the time was going off the rails, and it's believed the stress became too much for Tilikum to bear. This is in stark contrast to the attack on Ken Peters by the whale Kasaka, also featured in Blackfish. During an evening show, in plain view of the audience, Kasaka grabbed Ken's foot and dragged him to the bottom of the tank. And she did this over and over until he was eventually able to coax her into letting go, allowing him to swim to safety. Unlike Tilikum, who attacked with reckless abandon, Kasaka was calm and focused during her aggression. These whales have the power to tear humans apart if they so choose, but she only exerted enough force as was necessary to keep a firm grip on Ken's legs, and only held him under the water as long as he could hold his breath. The exact reason for this attack is also unclear, but John Hargrove speculates it's because the trick that Ken was asking Kasaka to do was one she'd continually failed in the past, and being asked to do it again drove her over the edge, but not enough to want to seriously hurt him. And therein lies the truth. Orcas are not defined strictly by a set of animalistic behaviors. They, like humans, learn from their environments and their guardians. They can utilize accumulated knowledge and ingenuity to overcome obstacles. And this reality is showcased by a story that John Hargrove recounted about his time working at Seaworld. He was in a training session with Kasaka's daughter, Takara, when he slipped and crushed his chest against her rostrum, breaking his ribs and leaving him unable to swim out of the pool on his own.
So she's rough. She's a rough ride, and only a few of us that swam with her, 4 of us that swam with her, because she was considered restricted. And, but here, knowing, I mean, obviously we know the intelligence of this, well, we have a glimmer into how intelligent these animals are. You know, we've yet to learn everything. We have no idea what they're truly capable of. Could one day just absolutely amaze us even more than it does today. And she came to me very gently, didn't even cause, like, as her body shifted in front of me, no wake or anything like that that would make my body move or anything. I put both my hands on her rostrum and I asked her for a peck push So, it's like I put both of my feet out, and then she puts each one of her pecs on my feet, and then I can steer her which way I'm gonna go. And normally, she'll hit you hard. Those pecs will hit your feet hard. One time she even knocked my back out of alignment because she hit my feet so hard. But in this situation, I never even felt her pecs touch my feet. Not at all. And I was at that point, everything was really starting to tighten up. I was starting to get in worse and worse shape. And I knew I couldn't make it out of the pool without her. I needed her to take me out of the pool. But I never felt her pecs touch my feet. So I'm effortlessly, gliding into the back pool. She takes me to the back pool again when we do a pec step off, which of course Jeff and Carol are familiar with. The whales tend to just kind of toss you, throw you out of the pool, and it's everything on your body is just very jarring. There's nothing gentle about swimming with those size animals. And but in this situation, she sank down really deep. At this point, because you have to turn around to get off, now just one foot is on one peg, and the other one is just off to the side. She sank down really deep, and then she came up really slow and really high, past her pectoral flippers. So all I had to do was take just the smallest step like that to step out of the pool instead of being thrown out of the pool. Now what's amazing about that is that this is something that was not taught to her. We didn't teach her this. This was not part of her criteria. This is not what she knew, what she needed to do to be reinforced. This was a choice that she made based on the situation, which shows the intelligence of the whale, it shows the relationship, and it shows the awareness.
This is just one of many stories John Hargrove claims to have which showcase the hyper-intelligence, both academic and emotional, that orcas possess. And for all the interest humans have in learning more about orcas, it's clear that the feeling is mutual. There's a lot both sides could stand to learn from each other if we could understand each other's language. But how would we go about achieving that? Well, I hate what AI is doing to the world, especially the entertainment industry, as much as anyone else. But I can't deny that this is one potential good use for it. Its power to quickly process, sift through, and optimally select information is undeniably impressive, all with a simple prompt. But the power of AI could propel communication between humans and orcas to new, grand heights, enough to shatter the language barrier. But really, it's not that humans are incapable of doing the job. Technically, the problem is one of time and money. The human brain is only so powerful, with only so good a memory, and is prone to making mistakes. Coupled with the costs that would naturally be accrued from such a gargantuan task as, deciphering another species' language, the benefits of AI are undeniable and, in my humble opinion, worth signing your name into the devil's book. And the seeds of this endeavor have already been planted. A collaboration between the Raincoast Conservation Foundation and Earth Species Project is feeding decades of killer whale acoustic recordings and data into an AI to build a database linking specific vocalizations with specific behaviors, individuals, and contexts. The process might be slow but steady, and I believe it will herald a lot of positive changes, but not without significant obstacles. So for this segment, I'm going to compare and contrast examples from history with how our inevitable future relationships with killer whales will likely play out. Call it future history. If you live in the United States, you'll be inclined to think of the white settlers versus Native Americans conflict, especially considering the various atrocities the human species has already inflicted upon orcas. Another good comparison would be the ancient Romans' relationships with the various barbarian tribes that roamed across modern-day Europe. Rome shared borders with the lands these tribes inhabited, and intermingling of linguistics occurred frequently. Just like orcas, all these various tribes spoke with different languages, so translators would frequently be sought out in diplomatic matters. These are just a couple of examples out of hundreds. After all, every corner of civilization today was once tribal. Much like in history, there will undoubtedly be people who will seek to take advantage of the orcas for profit. Some might even fall victim to their own pride. After all, humans are so used to feeling exceptional that this future reality is bound to ruffle a few feathers. But there's reason to believe that the relationship between humans and orcas will be less hostile. For one thing, humans can't encroach on the whale's physical space. It takes a lot for us to survive underwater, and the idea of humans colonizing the sea is actually more far-fetched, given the enormous cost and for little reward. But there's a bigger reason why things could go better, and it's the one thing that Seaworld deserves credit for, despite all their atrocities. They made people fall in love with killer whales, the single greatest factor that will contribute to positive relations between humans and orcas is what I like to call Disney Princess Syndrome. You don't need me to tell you that there's a lot of people who'd love to be able to speak with animals, and probably just as many who'd fight tooth and nail for their well-being if it meant maintaining positive relations with them. It goes without saying that this would revolutionize human society, a change on par with the Industrial Revolution or the domestication of livestock and pets, and there's a ton of knock-on effects that this will inevitably cause, enough that I could make a whole other video. I might do that at some point. For now, I'll make some general predictions on the timeline of events. The current research will continue steadily over the next few decades, but the first serious attempt to speak with orcas won't happen until the 2040s, and will continue on the regular, gradually improving our relations with them one pod at a time. True diplomatic ties will be established between humans and a handful of pods sometime in the 2090s. Time will tell if I'm wrong or not on the dates, but someday in the future, humans and orcas will coexist as equals. That much I'd stake my life on. Thank you for watching. As I always say, any and all feedback you have to give is appreciated. This is my first video, I'm editing myself and it took a lot out of me, but I'm committed to pushing forward. My next video is going to be something a bit different. Alright, goodbye and best wishes.